How we doing, guys? Dr. Klein from Rimrock Wellness Center will be going over the founder exercise today. The idea here is we're resisting restriction. We're trying to find that restriction and push up against it. Instead of pushing up against weight, we're pushing up against imbalanced muscle and that joint tissue that's just hardened. So you can see those muscles working there, the erectors where they meet the traps, pulling up. So we're trying to drive the hips down as you drive the head up. So hopefully that gives you a little visual here. So we're starting out with the measuring stick hands. And we're going to go slow mode here. We want to slow it down. So measuring stick hands is your thumbs on your ribs, your pinky on your pelvis, that little bone in the front of your pelvis. So we're engaging and we're lifting the torso. The reason I got the neck bent into extension here is to create some natural cervical curvature. So this helps me get my hips underneath me. Heel, hip, shoulder, all plumb line. And then we're going to add the neck last. So as we're engaging with the measuring stick hands, we're tightening that hip flexor area, lengthening the spine. Then we're going to pull the head, the back of the head. So if you want to feel the back of your skull, even you'll feel a little knob back there. It's called your external occipital protuberance. You're taking that point and you're driving it up and back, and that's going to kind of like someone's grabbing you by the base of your skull and they're lifting you up and back, pulling your weight into your heels even more while you're maintaining that hip flexor engagement. So this is going to feel like it's shifting your weight into your heels, and you're almost going to feel like you're teetering on falling backwards. That's when you really want to think about grabbing, widening your feet, widening the arches of your feet, grabbing the ground to stabilize you so you don't fall backwards. So this is a really exaggerated stance, really adding a lot of decompression. So first we're lengthening the spine, keeping that neck in that curve, and then we're pulling the head up and back. So we're lengthening the spine, driving the skull up and back, maintaining that engagement of the hip there. Not locking the knees out to do this either. Okay, let's continue on with opening the arms. And we're opening up those arms, building up that restriction, pulling our weight into our heels. And now here we're shifting our weight, hinging at the hips while we raise the arms at the exact same time. So this adds a lot of strain. So every build up you're putting here, you're putting tension on your spine, you're adding to it by hinging deeper at the hips and by extending the arms even farther. You're trying to coordinate moving your hips and your shoulders together. So drop into a forward fold and try to keep the motion in the hips. So as you crawl your fingers forward, inching them forward, you're driving your hips back. So your weight's not shifting forward, you're lengthening the spine. It's that tug of war from the tailbone and the skull pulling in opposite directions. Hinging again, raising those arms into the sphere of tension. So all fingertips are spreading and pressing into each other as you drive deeper. We're trying to get 4 deep breaths in all these positions. 4 breaths in each position. What we did there at the start is we created a neck curve and then used it to pull our weight back into our heels before we get into the hinge founder position. So it's all about that basic decompression stance, finding that tension before you hinge deeper. Here's it from the front view. Same thing. Measuring stick hands. We're opening up there. You can see that a lot of tension is built up as I open up those arms in the long wing position. I'm keeping my chest broad and trying to maintain that. I'm not letting the chest cave in. So we're opening up the chest, keeping that chest broad as we drive forward. So you can alternate between these 2 positions where you're doing the flat hand palms up versus the sphere of tension, fingertips together. You guys might notice that those hit slightly different muscles there. So see how the weight shifts back, almost like you feel like you're going to fall backwards. You'll notice that this activates the arches of your feet. As you shift backwards, the feet have to grab the ground to stabilize you. That lets you know how you're doing this right. If you can see the forearms here working, that's a lot of muscle activation. This is whole body. We're driving up, just like a deadlift. You're pushing off the ground, driving up. This might even look a little bit like, that straight leg deadlift here. Walking those fingers forward, pushing those hips back, not letting the hips slide forward the best as you can. Rest there on the shins, lengthening, coming back into long wing position, and then driving up into the founder. This is the founder exercise, but it is a silly exercise if you're not doing it correctly, if you're not finding the decompression stance. If you're not shaking and sweating and breathing heavy after this, you've probably done it wrong. Again, the idea is to find the restriction and push up against it, decompressing, driving off the ground, and lengthening. So you can either do a sustained hold, 4 breaths while holding the position, or you can do about 4 to 5 repetitions.